Reviewer TV, what's happening, and welcome back to the channel. We've got a new video with a new piece of equipment. It's a new machine. It's not a Can-Am, it's not the Beast, but it is still a beast. So I want to welcome you to the next and newest piece of equipment in the family here. We're doing a video on this today because we thought it would be helpful for people that may be considering buying a new tractor. I decided to go ahead and buy a piece of equipment like this because I have a pretty large piece of land in the 2-acre range, which isn't really large compared to some of your guys' pieces of land that have 10, 20 acres or even more. But for me, there's a lot to keep up on. And I had a tractor a long time ago, which was not something of this caliber. And it was a old tractor. But I decided to go out and get a new Kubota. So that's what we have here today. So today we're going to go over a few things. We're going to talk about this machine, why I chose this machine. We're going to talk about after delivery inspection, what you should check for on this machine, and show you guys a few different things. And then we'll talk about some accessories and different things of that nature. So let's go ahead and jump right into this machine. So what I did is I went out and I bought a brand new Kubota, and it has 0 hours on it yet. It hasn't even hit its first hour. If you come up close and look at here, you can see the model of this Kubota. This particular Kubota is the L2501. It's a 24-25 horse diesel. And then I also had the LA526 Kubota loader attachment added to this. Now just keep in mind right off the bat that when you buy these machines, they come with just the tractor itself. You'll have the ROPS up here, which help to protect in case you tip the machine over, you don't roll on yourself or roll the machine. But they don't come standard with the loader attachment. That's something you'll have to add, and of course it's going to add to the additional cost of the machine if that's something you plan on using. Some people don't want the loader, but in my book, that's going to be the majority of what I'm going to use this machine for today. So I wanted to go ahead and tell you about the two different types of machines you can get. They have a standard manual, well, I just call it manual transmission, which this is not the manual transmission. If you look to the side over here, you guys can see that this is the hydrostatic transmission. That's what the HST stands for. So there's two different ways of buying a Kubota tractor, and I'm sure there's other different types of Kubotas that'll have even different types of transmissions. But the basic is to understand is manual and hydrostatic. And the difference between manual is, for those that are familiar, you know that you're going to have an actual clutch, and then you're going to switch it from first, second, or whatever to whatever gear. And generally, in the center, if you come over here and look, you'll see that there'd be a stick coming out of the center here, and that would be where you hit the clutch and change it to first or go into reverse to control the tractor. This, however, is a different type of machine. Based off of what you may be using the machine for generally is how you're going to want to gauge whether or not you should get the hydrostatic transmission or you want to get the manual. Other people may just like the hydrostatic transmission, and I'll show you why. Come around here and I'll show you on this side what we're talking about. So on a hydrostatic machine, you don't have in here the center gear shift, like I said, for the clutch. You have this forward and reverse pedal for going back and forth. So generally, you're going to start your machine. You'll push down the clutch to start the machine. Use your glow plug if needed, if it's cold. You have a throttle up here, so that'll throttle up the engine or not. Once you turn on the machine and you know you lift your loader up, get it ready to be able to travel to whatever you're going to go do, it's as simple as pushing this pedal forward to go forward or hitting it backwards to go backwards. So that's the difference between a hydrostatic machine and using a manual transmission. Now, I'm sure you guys are wondering why you would want to get a hydrostatic versus a manual. So I'll kind of give you more or less some reasons to why I would think it would be more of a suggested piece to use the hydrostatic versus the manual. Others may have different reasoning. It's up to you, but this is why my thinking was to get this particular machine. So if you're going to end up right off the bat buying one of these Kubota machines and you didn't get a loader and you didn't anticipate on getting a loader, chances are you're going to want to go with a manual machine, because what you're probably going to be doing if you're not having a loader on the front is you're going to be doing the majority of your work by pulling implements. And when I say implements, if you don't know what implements mean, or that's too fancy of a term, they're considered attachments, which you would attach to your 3-point hitch back here. And if you come back here and take a look, you can see you have 3 points, and this is where you would be attaching your implements. So if you wanted to get, say, like a dragging blade or a dragging box, or you wanted to get like a brush hog is kind of like a big mowing deck where you can mow over like bushes and brush and heavier duty types of bushes and greens and things that you're going to be mowing. It just depends on what you're going to be using the tractor for. I will probably get a brush hog in the later days to come, but for now, I'm not going to be doing a lot of pulling for the type of work I'll be doing on my property. I'm generally going to be using the loader. And so, when you think about this, you know, the loader comes in a couple of different ways. You know, it depends on the loader attachments you get. When I got this one, I had my dealer throw on the LA526. It's a heavier duty loader attachment. The good thing about this loader attachment is it comes with a quick release bucket. And that's something you kind of pay for to have added onto here, so you don't have to sit here and try to unbolt everything to get your bucket off if you're going to put, say, like some forks. I'm going to later on get some forks so I can drop the bucket at quick will, go pull up, hook the forks right up, drop my quick release switches down, and now I have a fork for lifting different items. If you come up here and look at what I'm talking about, I'll switch your places. You can come around this side. If you look at these handles over here, come on around this side. If you look at these handles right here, these are the quick release handles. So basically when you're done using this bucket, you're going to pull this up, all the way up. It's going to pull these pins out and make them come upwards. Then you'll be able to just lift the loader right out from under. Right here is where it kind of connects in there. And it'll lift right under, then you can go pull up to your next attachment, and that's how you would use the quick release attachment. These loaders have a blade, and they also have some holes on the front of the loader, so you can add an additional cutting blade onto this, so you can add a blade under here and then bolt it on. So that's how the loader comes if you decide to get that. Otherwise, if you're not going to be doing a lot of, like I said, loader work, you're probably going to be wanting to use the pull attachments, the implements mostly. And I've heard from other people's experience with their manual transmission Kubotas that you get a little bit more torque power when you're pulling implements with the manual transmission versus the hydrostatic. I don't know yet. I haven't pulled anything on this. I'm not going to say that's the definite case, but that's some of the feedback I've seen, you know, from other people who have a manual transmission versus the HST. So being that, I would say for me, I kind of like the HST because it's just quick and easy. You know, you're pulling up, you're going to get a scoop forward, hit your pedal backwards, you know, you're going forward to dump it, then you're going backwards. It just makes it quicker than having to clutch, reverse, clutch, forward. And it just depends on what you're doing. If you're mostly going to be going in forward motion, with the exception of reversing to get out of the area, then that's when the HST is golden. It just makes it a lot quicker. And don't kid yourself. An HST model is probably just as powerful as a manual, but that's a matter of opinion when you're pulling implements. So we'll go ahead and talk about a few things about this machine. Owning this machine is not something like, for those who know me, they're probably saying, oh look, he just went out and bought a $27,000 machine, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's not as easy as it seems, folks. So when you're considering buying one of these machines, it's a financial investment. It's not cheap to buy one of these machines. This machine is just as expensive as that machine. And for those who watch the channel of Review It TV, you know what this machine is because I've done plenty of videos. So if you're new to the channel and you've just now come over to see this, you can go back on the channel and watch a bunch of videos on that. But we're here focusing on the Kubota today, so that's what we'll continue to talk about. So, like I said, these machines are a more inexpensive vehicle nowadays. But what they can do and how they can help you around your property, and even financially building some extra, some side cash. You know, you can use these machines to go out and do side work, supplemental income. And that's a great thing to have too. So if you're not primarily beating your machine up and using it every day and you want to be able to go out and make a little bit extra income to get a return on what you had invested in this machine initially, then that's something to consider. So if you're buying one of these machines and you're like, hey, you know, I'm probably not going to use it as much as I would like, but I would still like to make some money off of it, it's a great way to make money. You know, you might have neighbors, you might have friends, you might find people that are looking to come get gravel spread, dirt spread, maybe you have a brush hog and you need to go mow down a property for someone. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about the initial investment in this machine. For me, what I would recommend is if it's your first time, like it is for me, buying a brand new tractor such as this caliber, and when you're talking about other ends, like there's some lower brand ends like Branson And you know, you have YH, what was it? Yanmar, sorry. Yeah, Yanmar is another brand. And then when you start getting up into your like New Holland and John Deere and Kubota, you're talking about top of the line machines. So, you know, the financial pricing on these are going to be a lot more expensive than some of your lower end like Yanmar, and that's a matter. I'm sure people have Yanmar like, no, they're just as good, but my family had a Yanmar a long time ago, and it was a manual. It was a 2-wheel drive, and it was good. It was a refurbished model. They refurb these things and then they paint them, and then you know you have a little 3-horse diesel motor on it, and it worked well. And I won't get too into that, but when you're coming back into a machine like this, and this is a 4-wheel drive machine, guys. So this isn't just a 2-wheel; it's a 4-wheel drive. So that was another factor I had to consider when buying this, is whether or not a 2-wheel drive would be worth having, or just getting a 4-wheel drive to eliminate any of the in-between worries about if this machine was going to be powerful enough to do the jobs I'm going to do. So I would suggest, like me, when I first was calling around shopping, I was like, oh, you know what, I should get the 2-wheel. It's going to be a little cheaper and I can get the loader. And then I started remembering about using a 2-wheel tractor and some of the bogging issues I had when the machine would bog down, or just trying to push into a pile of gravel or dirt, or you're trying to lift broken up cement, or maybe you're pushing a tree root or a trunk out. It's going to be really beneficial, you guys, to just go with a 4-wheel drive machine. Yes, it's going to cost more in price. You're talking about some more thousands, but I promise you in the end that if you get one of those machines, you'll never have to worry about anything below that. I mean, now if you start doing even heavier stuff and you've got massive jobs, you may even want to get something bigger than this. But for the everyday guy that has a couple acres of land, you know, and you're not doing anything massive and you're just trying to keep up, maybe you're spreading gravel, maybe you're leveling dirt, maybe you're pulling out tree trunks, or you're going to be lifting items with your forks, or you're mowing around a bigger property, this is a perfect size machine for you. So keep the L2501 model Kubota in consideration when shopping around. There's smaller models that still have 4-wheel drive, and they also have bucket loaders on the front of them, and you can still pull attachments, but this is the one that I chose because I thought this would be the one to consider. So when you're doing this, like I said, financially, I kind of go by this teeter-totter notion of mine. Like when you're on a teeter-totter, you know, the teeter-totter, here's the center, you're doing this number, right? You got a person here, a person there. I try to keep my teeter-totter balanced, right? I don't keep it like this or that. And what I mean financially is if you're considering getting one of these machines and you're trying to figure out how you're going to be able to afford this machine, because maybe you can't put $27,000 down or whatever the machine's going to cost, depending on how many implements you get and such, because the machine by itself, take away this loader bucket and you're just going with the machine here, you're looking at around $20,000. Now you add the loader attachment on the front, that's another $6,000 plus. Then you start adding additional implements like your box blade, or you're adding a brush hog or a plow, then you're talking even more thousands of dollars. So it can go starting around 25 plus tax plus interest, depending if you're purchasing. If you're doing a purchase order, you can get rid of the interest, but you are going to pay your tax. Looking at about $1,000 on a price of a machine similar to this. But you know, you're wanting to keep that into consideration when you're balancing the teeter-totter. So I would suggest, if you're looking to get a machine and you want to be able to afford this, and maybe you're financing, that you make sure you get rid of some weight on this side before you add the weight of this on this side, so you're not like this. So if you're going to pick up a financial piece of equipment like this and you're not paying it off in one bulk sum, you're going to want to get rid of some of the other debt and burdens off of your financial stability. So that way when you put the tractor there, you're still balancing. So I would say pay off some bills, pay off some cards, get rid of some stuff to accommodate your new payment. Or if you're paying this off in cash, which is the best option, you know, pay it off, done, you own it. If you go to sell it, no problem with the banks, this, that, and the other, then it's just easy to deal with. That's how you keep yourself balanced. So let's move on to the next thing to consider when getting this machine. So we'll just consider that you went out and bought this machine, right? You bought in the Kubota. you're having it delivered or you're picking it up. It doesn't really matter whether you're having it delivered or you're picking it up and delivering it to your own house yourself. You want to do a after delivery inspection. And that's something a lot of people don't consider because they put too much trust into manufacturers or dealers. And I'm not to throw any dealer or anybody under the bus, but when you get these machines, you know, they're supposed to grease zerks, they're supposed to add the correct amount of fluids, whether it's your front axle fluid, it's your transmission fluid, it's your coolant, it's your oil. It doesn't matter. You want to check these. So we're going to go over a few things to check on this particular machine. If you do have this machine and you're watching this video because you're trying to learn what you should do to do your first pre-inspection before you dive in and just start driving this machine around, I'll go ahead and go over a few of these things for you. So we're going to talk first about grease zerks. On this machine, you want to consider pivoting points. And pivoting points is going to be anywhere where you have like a pin where things are going to be moving. So if you look down in here, you can see there's a grease zerk. And if you look at that grease zerk, you can see obviously that there's grease on it. So what the manufacturer or the dealer should do is, excuse me, I'm just getting a rag to wipe the grease off, is they should be going around and initially greasing everything on the machine for you. And they don't have to go nuts on it, but they should add a little bit of grease to all your pivoting points. And that includes your control arms, your lower ball joints, stuff of that nature. Anything that has, like you can see here's another pivoting point, there's another grease zerk right there. Here's another pivoting point, there's a grease zerk down here. And you can always tell whether or not they've actually put grease on because they don't come out of the manufacturer greased. Basically, this thing comes broke down without the tires on it, without the loader on it, and they delivered in a crate, a wood crate to the dealership. And then as these are being sold, the dealer will talk to you and ask about the types of functionality and things that you want on your machine. And then they build it accordingly. So if you decide I want a loader, I want the R4 style tires instead of the thinner ranch tires, which is what we got here. You can see we haven't even used this machine yet. It's still got the stickers on the tires. But nevertheless, that's how they build it. So when they go through this machine, they're doing a however many point inspection on this machine to make sure that everything's ready for the customer upon delivery or pickup. And sometimes when people are getting into a rush, it's easy to forget to go backtrack and, you know, finish topping off. Say like they started doing some oil on your front axle and someone pulled them away for a minute and then they came back and they forgot that they hadn't topped it off all the way. So then they just start tightening things up, putting the plugs back on. And now you have oil in your front axle, but you don't have the right amount. Or they started greasing, you know, all the zerks, and then they got pulled away and they came back, and in their head, you know, they figured they had greased everything and they didn't go back and double check it. Then that puts a small burden on the consumer, which is you. Because, you know, you're expecting to get this machine from the dealership ready to go. Pull it off the truck and let's go to work. That's not always the case. And do dealers do that on purpose? I don't think all dealers do it on purpose, but your dealer may not be as thorough as my dealer. So you can't always just assume that your dealer is going to get everything in order. So that's why we do the after delivery inspection. So and I'm going to give you some examples. We'll go through some zerks on here first. It's better to check your manual. It'll tell you where all the grease zerks are, and you get a separate manual for this loader arm and loader bucket. Separate from the actual tractor manual. So it'll tell you where to grease the zerks and how to service your loader arm as well. But I was going through this machine ahead of time and I started checking the zerks because I wanted to see. You know, I was like, hey, I want to see if all the zerks are done. I want to do my after delivery inspection because I want to use this machine, but I don't want to take it out there just trusting that everything is 100%. Because if you go out there and you start putting a lot of wear and tear on this machine and it's lacking some grease or some fluid, you may have this sucker right back at the shop, and then the dealer may try to fight with you and say, hey, it's not our fault, you didn't, and yada yada. You know, we're not going to get into all the details of it, but it can turn into a nightmare for a brand new machine, and that's something you want to avoid. So like I said, pivoting points. If you have the L2501, you have the 526 loader arm, check your pivoting points. You got them here, 1, 2, you got 3, you got 4, 5, there's like 6 on either side. And then what you're going to check next, and I'll show you where I found my dealer, and I don't know if, like I said, if this is the dealer. The dealer and the manufacturer know who's supposed to be checking all this. But I found where they were lacking some grease, and this is on my initial inspection. So I wanted to show you guys an example of this, so you can see that it's not always kosher and that you should check your machine before you jump on it. If you look down here, as you can see, and I'll keep my big dome out of the way, you've got your little control arms, your little ball joints right here. Sorry about that, keep hitting the switch. But you can see that there's a grease zerk right here, right? And then there's going to be another one on the very end of that side of this arm. And then here's like the little, right here is like a little pouch. And this is a rubber pouch, and that's where the grease goes into the zerk and it fills up this little pouch. Well, I can feel this pouch. It's not stiff at all. So there's not a lot of grease or any. You can see on the end of the grease zerk, there is no grease on this at all. There's none on that side, and on the reverse passenger side of this same arm, there's no grease. So there's already 4 grease zerks that I found that were lacking. And this is important because this pivoting point right here is one where you're moving your steering wheel and your tires all the time. So this needs to have grease in it. This is very important. So I haven't even started to use this machine yet, so I will be going back to my dealer, not to throw hooks or anything, but to go pick up some Kubota grease because I want to go ahead and top these off before I really start using the machine. If you look over here on this other side, you can come up here. Look down this way. Okay. Same thing over here. Right here is another grease zerk. Here's the little pouch. It's like a rubber pouch. They paint over it, guys, so it might chip off a little bit, but this is where the grease is going to go in and you'll feel it. Generally, this will puff up like a little balloon once it starts getting full of grease. I can push on it, it's empty. So there's either little to no grease in this at all, which is not good. And then if you come around on this side and look over here, down this way, if you look right here, here's another grease zerk. Here's that little pouch I was talking about. Look at it. And see how the paint comes off? Because that's just plastic they painted over, but that's empty. There's no grease. This thing should be kind of puffed up because it's full of grease. There's no grease on that at all, and that little stain is from my hand earlier, but if you look on that finger, nothing. It's just like dry. So yes, I found some spots on here that needed to be greased. So make sure you're checking all your grease zerks, guys. We're not going to show you how to do the service on this today. I'm going to come back at 10 hours and do a 10-hour maintenance service on this, which will be to make sure that you have, you know, all your zerks re-greased. And then we'll do some other things on this that they recommend to do. So upon looking at it, and also, you know, on your bottom of your foot pedal for the throttle to go forward or backwards, under there you'll find grease zerks. You'll find grease zerks all over the place. So use your manual and check it to make sure that all your grease zerks have grease in it before you start using this. So the next thing that you want to check is your fluids. We'll go ahead and do a kind of a once over on this machine on the fluids that we're checking. So let's start with the engine bay. In order to open your engine compartment on the L2501, you want to move your grill guard forward. And in order to do that, there's a little spring-loaded switch. You're going to pull that and you're going to slide that forward. And it only goes over just a little bit, maybe 5 inches or so. On the L2501 on the front end, you'll find this little tiny ring. You can feel it right here. If you pull down on it, that's how your spring-loaded strut hood will open. It has like these little struts here, like a little cylinder in the middle, and you can see it. Let me get my light. That way you guys can see everything I'm talking about, so we want good lighting for you. But there's a strut, I call them like a strut cylinder right here. And that's what's attached to your hood, and that's what lifts your hood up. So it's kind of nice, kind of handy. I like the fact that on this machine, the hood opens up from the front and not the back. On some of these older machines, it opens up this way, and then you don't have a lot of room. So the best thing you can do is start checking everything on here. As you can see, this motor has a little bit of dust on it, and that's from because most dealers don't have the real estate space to store all these machines inside a building when they get them. So they assemble them. Some of the base models they'll assemble ready to go, and then they'll keep a lot of them in crates outside. So there's a chance that it may have rained or something. You'll get a little bit of residual dust, but don't panic. It doesn't mean the machine's used. So the first thing I'm going to check is my coolant level. As you can see right down here, there's the coolant level. You have low and then high lines. You want to be at least halfway, if not up to the full line. As long as you're about halfway up in between here, which you can see mine's a little above half, 3/4 of the way full, I would consider that a safe line for your coolant. The other thing you'll want to check later on is this screen right here. And if you see this screen, there's a little screen right here that opens up, and I'll try to Open it up here. This is your radiator screen. And you can pull this out, and this goes in front of your radiators. You can see the radiators right back there. But when you take this screen out, and in order to do this correctly, you're going to want to lift your loader completely up in the air and then lock your loader over there so the loader doesn't come down on you. You'll be able to pull this screen all the way out, blow it off, clean it, slide it right back in there, and this little spring will lock it back in place. This helps for debris like leaves, cotton, depends on where you live and what's floating in the air, to keep that radiator from getting overloaded. It even has some little foam on the sides to keep shit from sucking into the side of it and getting all over there. You have your air filter right here, which this is brand new. You want to go ahead and squeeze this little guy every once in a while to make sure there's no dirt built up in there. Check your air filter. Don't clean your air filter out and blow it out and put it back in when it's time for service. They're not that expensive. Just buy a new air filter and keep your air filter clean. You can probably get some battery port grease and just spread a little bit on each side of your battery ports. That'll keep them from building up that crud and that calcium buildup you see on some batteries when they're starting to get older or used. We're also going to talk about the oil, and we'll talk about the front axle fluid and then the hydraulic fluid. So you want to check these two as well. On the oil, if you come over to the other side of the machine, which is over here on this particular model, the oil is going to be right down here. Now if you look, you can see this little guy right here, this dipstick. That's my oil dipstick. Here's my oil fill. And in order to fill the oil correctly, there's 3 bolts for this little cover. I'm not going to get into it today and take it off because you guys can see how to do that. It's real simple. You'll have a bolt here, like a bolt on the bottom, and I think one right back here. You take that off, this will come off, you'll be able to get to your oil fill. But yeah, the oil dipstick, let me check it because I haven't even checked it. I'm going to grab a piece of tissue so I can look at it. And we'll just show you guys right off the hand that it's got oil in it because that's an important thing. The other thing we'll check after that is the front axle fluid. That's another real important thing that sometimes isn't completely topped off because of air pockets that may get in there, not allowing it to fill up correctly when the dealer first does it. So, if you come over this way, if you look at the oil, now check it out here, you can see my oil is full. Here's the bottom, here's the top. My oil is right there on the edge. And you can see that the oil is off. I could do that again, so I'll do it one more time. Showing you guys right here. This is the full, this is the empty. I wouldn't keep it, I mean you can put it right up to the full, but if it's only just like maybe a millimeter or two below that, that's still fine in your safe zone. So then check it with the machine off, pull it back out, and there you go. You can see right there that the oil is full and it's just below the full line. You can see there, see that? There it is, and it's clear, so it's very clean oil. I haven't even used this yet. Generally on a diesel motor, you guys know from anyone who has experience with diesel motors that oil gets black quick, regardless if it's been used up and it's time to change it, or if it's still new and you've only been running it for a few hours. It's just the way the diesel motors go. So that tells me that the oil on my engine is good, with the exception of the couple grease zerks that need to be greased and the coolant, which looks to be good. We're going to go around and check the hydro fluid. Now the hydraulic fluid on this particular machine doesn't have a dipstick. It actually has like a little fill glass that you can see. And generally you'll see it either halfway or 3/4 of the way, or it'll be full. It's kind of hard to see. So what some people recommend is putting a little bit of dye, this safe dye that can go in your hydraulic fluid, and that way it'll show better on the hydraulic fill glass so you can see it. But if we come around to the other side of the machine again, this is what you want to look for. The fill glass is going to be right here, and it's going to be hard for you guys to see it, but if you look down in here, there's a little glass there, and you can't tell by the view of the camera, but if you look low, you can see a little bubble. It's at the very top of there, and that's when I first got this machine, it was just a little bit below that, but since I've been moving the loader arms up and down, it's kind of raised the fluid. If I actually lift the loader arms up and stuff, it may drop the fluid down because it'll suck some fluid into these cylinders and then drop the level. But I can see the little bubble, and it might be hard for you guys to see it. But this is how you check the hydraulic fluid, transmission fluid, on this particular machine. Now, it would have been nice to have a dipstick. This is kind of a funky setup, and like I was telling you, it's kind of hard to tell. Like looking at it, it looks empty. So that's why they put that dye in there. So the dye will darken the fluid up, and then you'll really be able to tell if it's full or not. So if you're gonna fill that up, or you happen to check it, and it's either empty because they didn't fill up your hydraulic fluid enough, or it's low, you'll come right back here to add fluid. And if you check it out back here, this is your hydraulic oil fill. This red cap right here. All right, so like I was saying, and then you'll check your fill glass on the front where I showed you guys, and then that's how you'll know if your hydraulic fluid is good. So we're gonna go to the next step, and that's gonna be to check your front axle fluid. Okay guys, so we're gonna check the front axle fluid. There's two different plugs here. There's actually three. You'll have a drain plug. This is your fill plug. And then on the other side of the machine, you'll have a check plug, which you'll be able to check the fluid. In order to check this correctly, you want to take the fill plug off and loosen it. So we'll just do that and loosen that a little bit, just like so. And it shouldn't come out of here because you're never going to fill it up to the very top of the fill plug area. So you can see right there, there's no fluid. So let's go around to the other side now, and this is how you're going to check this correctly. Coming up. Okay, so you look at this tiny little plug right here, and that's going to be the check plug. So when I take this plug off, what we should have is some residual fluid dripping out of there. If it does drip out of there, that means your front axle's filled correctly. Now, in some cases, which we may run into that, and I'm pretty sure we probably will, but it's not a big deal, you'll take this plug off and you won't have any residual coming out of it. What happens a lot of times with the dealers is when they put fluid in, they'll get an air pocket in here, and they'll start filling it up, and it'll drip out, so they'll assume that it's full. They'll put their caps back on, and then they'll send the machine off thinking, okay, we're good to go. Then you'll go and check it, and the air pocket will have settled from moving the tractor around and using it, and the fluid will actually drop down below where it should be. So that's not necessarily a dealer error, it's just things that happen. So it's really hard to differentiate whether or not it was a lazy technician not filling this up correctly or an air pocket. But nevertheless, you should check it and make sure you have enough fluid. So we'll go ahead and remove this. It's real easy. Now, if I take this plug off and there's nothing dripping, what I'm gonna do myself, and don't drop this in there, is I'm gonna take my little cotton ball and I'm just gonna stick it right here on the inside of there. Now, if this gets soaked just from doing that, then I'm gonna assume that this is filled right and that the residual had dripped out when he was checking it the first time, because I mean, it's not always gonna just pour out. But a lot of times you're gonna take this off and you're not gonna get no fluid coming out. And that's probably the case. Oh, you guys seen that? And actually, this little, be careful not to lose that copper ring. Take that back off, plug it over with your finger, just like that, so you get that copper ring back on, so you don't lose it. Hold on guys, be patient with me. I'm doing this one-handed. And get that on there, right? There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and just stick that back on there, like so. And that's a good sign. So you guys can see that my front axle is definitely filled right. That means that my dealer went through there and they did their job correctly and they filled the right amount of fluid in there. So that's a very good sign for me. I'm very pleased with my dealer to begin with, because it was my first time using, and it's right here on the front if you guys take a look. Come on over and check it out. If you're from the Albuquerque, New Mexico or surrounding area, Mesa Tractors is the place to go for your Kubota. Very cool dealership. Jed is the name of the guy I deal with. He's one of the owners. I'm not sure if he's the primary owner or not, but he's definitely one of the main guys to deal with. So when you're done, go ahead and just put your fill cap or your check cap back on. Don't torque it to death. Just get it on there and wipe it off. I'm really fickle about cleaning up my machine around greasing points and fluids, because I'm just a clean type of guy and I don't like having dirt and muck everywhere. It's going to be impossible to keep on some things, but on others it is. So then you'll come back over here, and you guys seen that fluid was really clean, and it was actually pouring out decently, so they put a reasonable amount in there. So my front axle is good. Make sure that that ring is still on your plug too when you go to put it back on. Don't cross thread it, take your time. I would tighten it all the way as far as you can with your hand, and then take your little socket. had to use a little extent, like a little adapter, because I don't have a 1/2-inch ratchet. So the adapter works. A little snap on here. And we're just going to go ahead and tighten it up a little bit. Just a little bit firm. That's it. So now you guys have seen, for the most part, that we showed you the oil, the coolant, the grease zerks, the hydraulic fluid. We showed you guys the front axle fluid. I'm going to go ahead and grease those 4 zerks. Alright folks, so the realistic things that happen, you know, when you don't have everything set up in your machine, you know, like the grease zerks. So we are gonna go ahead and take a quick trip to go grab some supplies for the tractor. Alright, so we had to break away for a moment, like I was mentioning earlier, to go grab some fluids and stuff here at the place where I brought the tractor, which would be Mesa Tractor, and we're pulling in right now. So the moral of the story is on this one is to possibly think ahead before you get your machine. That way you can prevent having to make an extra trip like I did, just in case your fluids and everything aren't to par, or your grease. I know the grease isn't a huge deal, but I definitely didn't want to risk not being able to drive the tractor and damaging something from no grease being dry. But you can see all the units here. So we are here, Mesa Tractor. I'm gonna run inside real quick and go grab some extra stuff. My suggestion, like I said, is just get you some extra tubes of grease, grab you some extra hydraulic fluid and stuff like that, so you have it in case you end up having to top something off when you get your machine delivered. And then that'll prevent you from any extra trips at first, and you'll be all set to go. So yeah, Mesa Tractor, this is where we got our tractor at. So I'm gonna run inside, grab some stuff real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so got the grease. Now we're set. Gonna go back, add a little bit of grease into those zerks we had showed you, and then we will finish with the accessories, and the machine should be ready to use then. Okay, so you probably would want to get yourself a separate grease gun if you already have grease guns that you're using currently for other types of grease. I have an electric grease gun, and then I have another manual grease gun such as this one, but I also picked up a third one, and this one will be dedicated to just the Kubota itself. I don't want to cross-contaminate greases because some greases aren't compatible with others. As you guys can see right here, I'm working with the Molylithium all-purpose heavy-duty grease, high performance by Kubota. So I'd recommend you guys get a tube of that. That's what I picked up today. I'll grab these little Pittsburgh. I use a lot of the inexpensive stuff from Harbor Freight for things like this, and like my torque wrenches, and it just, you know, you don't got to pay high dollar for little items such as these, I wouldn't think. I went over to Tractor Supply and looked at a couple of these, and they wanted like 40-50 bucks for a grease gun, you know, and I'm like, for what? I can just get a $16 one over at Harbor Freight that'll pump the grease out manually, and that's all I really need. So, you know, let's see that guy is just gonna go there. To prevent injury, wear gloves. That guy's just gonna screw into here. Get this put in. So we'll go ahead and add a tube of the grease. That way we can get those zerks, the zerks that I showed you guys earlier in the video that were not greased. Then when I went over to my dealer, I didn't make any deal about it. I didn't even mention it. Honestly, I just didn't feel like
is really that big of a deal to have to tell him. I mean, he did ask how my tractor was going, and I just told him fine. So, it's all good. You know, grease gun, a little bit of grease, and problem fixed. But like I was telling you guys earlier, I would recommend that you guys pick up a tube of this, maybe a jug of hydraulic fluid. I didn't need it because I showed you guys on like the front axle fluid or the hydraulic fluid that both of those were actually good to go. So there was no sense in me picking up any additional right now, because actually it's not time for my first service. So though it doesn't hurt, because you know, you may go to check your front axle and it may not be full all the way, and then you'll need a little bit to top off. So it doesn't hurt to pick some up anyway to get started. All right, let's just use a tube of this. One of these looked like they were kind of already purging a little bit here, so whoa! Almost got that all over the place. Glad I didn't. Let's stick that in there, all the way down to there. I'll just open this. You guys can see the grease in there ready to go. It's a dark colored grease, so get that on there real good and tight. Pretty sure you just push that all the way back up inside there. We'll test it out and see how it'll spill some grease out right away. I think I can feel it already. It should be coming out here in a second. There it is. See? All right, cool. So we're ready to grease those zerks. All right, so we'll go ahead and pump a little bit of grease inside this zerk right here that they missed. As you can see, here's the zerk, a little bit of the tube, a little empty there. I can see the tube's getting a little bit swollen now. I think right there is good. Don't have to go crazy on these. You can turn this to the left, I believe. If your zerk doesn't want to come off, then you just twist this one way or the other. It's supposed to let loose. Not sure why it doesn't want to. There we go. A little bit tight there, but hey, it worked. Okay, the final zerk that I noticed is back on the back of the PTO there. As you can see, that zerk right there doesn't have any grease in it either. Not a big deal. It's just to kind of, for the extension there, to grease the threads. So I'm going to go ahead and just grease that, and we'll be done with that, and we'll move on to the accessories. I will show you guys, like on this one more time for the grease zerk, what you're looking for when you get it right from a dealership. Now kind of indicate that everything was done. I'm not mad at my dealership at all for the couple little grease zerks that weren't completely done right. Not a big deal, but as you can see the residual, the black grease coming out on either side. When you start to see that when you're greasing, stop. Don't keep loading grease into where it's coming in big old glops and dripping down the side of your cylinder, and then it's just too much. So that's what you're looking for in all your grease zerks. Check your manuals so that way you know you got all your grease zerks covered. And if you find a couple that they missed, not a huge deal. It's life, you know what I mean? I would be more concerned if I had checked my front axle fluid and found that it was empty or didn't have enough fluid in it, or my oil was low, or that I didn't have enough coolant, than I would a couple grease zerks. I've missed some grease zerks in the past when I'm trying to do a service on a machine such as my Can-Am, or, you know, probably when I go to do this, I may forget a grease zerk. It's life. But the impression I got from my dealership upon purchasing this initially was not one to really show me that this is something that they carelessly did. It's just something that you slightly overlook. Not a major deal. Okay, guys. So now that we've covered the fluids, the front axle, the hydro, the coolant, the last thing I'm going to show you on your pre-inspection is your torque. And what I mean by torquing is you want to see how I'm wiping the grease off. I'm just fickle like that. You want to check the bolts on your tires. You want to make sure that they're torqued to spec. Another thing is you can assume that they're torqued to spec
But this is a big deal. You don't want to be driving out there and all of a sudden your wheel kind of cranks sideways or tweaks out because the bolts weren't torqued enough, and then it ruins the hub or something on your tractor. So as much as people say, oh, check your torque on your bolts of your tires at a 10-hour maintenance inspection, I would do that right off the bat. So we'll go ahead and do that next. I'm gonna go ahead and shut this. It's pretty simple with this too, guys. You're just gonna shut it like so. Slams into place. Clean off your fingerprints if you're fickle. Pull your grill guard forward, just like this. Locks into place, and that's that. So let me go ahead and get the right tools. I'm gonna get a torque wrench, and then we're gonna go ahead and check these front bolts. And then after that, I'm gonna show you guys a couple of accessories I would recommend that aren't required, but I figured I would buy them for me because it was something I thought would be necessary and kind of cool to preserve the life of the machine and to make fueling and steering the machine a little bit easier, and I'll show you guys that here shortly. Hey guys, so the last step on your after delivery inspection for me would be checking the torque specs on the tires. So the torque specs of the foot poundage for the rear tires is going to be 160, and it's going to be 100 for the front tires. So I have two different types, and if you guys are looking for a place to get a reasonably priced torque wrench, you can get them at Harbor Freight. That's where the Pittsburgh brand's carried. So you got a small one here, and this one will go all the way up to, let me check, because this is something to think about, because your small ones are not going to be big enough for your rear. This one will go up to 80. So this isn't even enough to do my front ones, actually. Yeah, I can only go to 80, so I'm probably not going to even use this guy. This is good for like doing my Can-Am stuff, you know, doing little bolts and stuff. But the big boy and the bad boy is this big Pittsburgh one. This one goes, I think, as low as 100, all the way up to, what are we looking at? 300. So you can torque up to 300 foot-pounds on this bad boy. You are going to need an adapter because this guy is so big that I'm not going to be able to put the sockets on unless I put the adapter on. Another thing to do is get you a couple half-inch extensions. And the reason I say this is because if you look over here, you've got to be able to get all the way over to this guy. And if you're way in here because your extension only comes out, you're not going to be able to get that wrench in there and connect it flush. So get you a couple of these. I have a nice snap-on one I like to use, so I'll go ahead and put that on there. And this is going to be for the rear. The rear is a 15/16, and it can be converted to a different size if you don't have that particular one. I've already went ahead and set this to 160 foot-pounds, so we're good to go on that. So kind of like a tire, I would suggest you just kind of crisscross, do this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, instead of going all in a row. You can go all in a row, I guess it's not going to hurt it, but you guys can see now I've got the amount of length I need to get this in flat, because if this is only out to here, there's no way you're going to get that in there flat because you're hitting this. All right, let's do it. And don't hold it here. You want to hold it back. Just like that. $160. Oops. Make sure you get all the way on there. I didn't get that one all the way on. Like that, all the way on there. And you can go all the way around again if it makes you feel comfortable. You know, and you can start, once they're torqued, you can just start going around. But that's going to be the rear tire. So the front size, I believe, I'm going to set this down. The way I keep track is I'll set this down. Lets me know I'm not finished because I put it back. The front is going to be a 7/8. So, and you don't need such a long extension to do that. Take off the first one, and then you're going to want to drop this down to 100. So I'm going to go all the way down here so I get down to the 100 point. That's right there, 100. Tighten that back up, and then a little bit of play in that one.
Feel a little bit of play in these guys. Okay, and so that's how you do it. I'm not going to show you the two other tires. Just do the same thing on the other side. So we've gone ahead and we've talked about the machine. We've talked about the financial choice making buying this machine. We've talked about the difference between a manual and a hydrostatic machine and what is my recommendation if you're shopping around and you're trying to figure out what the difference is on this. We've also talked about the after delivery inspection. And it doesn't matter if you're delivering it or they're delivering it. But it's really important that you do the after delivery inspection and check all your fluids. The only thing I said was lacking on this was those tie rod control arms, whatever, lower ball joints, you know, whatever you guys want to call them on the tractor anyway. The 4 Zerks that weren't greased, and that's not a huge deal. You guys can use AMS grease, use like a high temperature multi-use. Synthetic's probably the best, polyurethane, whatever. I'm gonna just stick with the Kubota stuff for this. I use the AMS on my Can-Am because that's just something I'm used to using, but I'll stick with the Kubota brand for this. The last thing I'm going to show you guys is a few additional accessories that are kind of cool to have for your machine when you're first getting set up. And then after that, we'll go ahead and call it a video. Okay guys, let's just go over the controls real quick before I show you the final accessories I was talking about. On this machine, in order to start this machine, you're going to have, if you look straight over this way at the key, you can see on the key here you have a glow plug setting. This is for your glow plug. If you turn it and you look at the dash up there, you can see the lights that appear. That's for the glow plug. When it's a cold day or it's winter and the machine's cold, you're going to want to hold that over for like 10 to 20, 30 seconds possibly. And then you'll push in your clutch down there. And then that's when you'll start it. Once you start it on these hydrostatics tractors, you can let off the clutch and it's simply going to be pushing forward to go forward, pushing backwards to go backwards. This is your brake. You have a little clip on the back of this. You can see how that raises up, so you can do the left or the right brake, or you can set that down and then you'll be hitting both brakes at the same time. This right here is your parking brake. So you're going to push that in, then you'll put that up and that'll lock. So let's try it. Push it in and then you can see. Now when you push it again, it releases the parking brake and then that's how you release the brake. Right here you have your lights, so you can turn this dial here on and you'll have regular lights and then you'll have your brights, kind of like a car. Your turn signal, one turn signal down, other one up, center is off. So if you're driving down the road and you have a car behind you, I'd recommend using that. If you're pulling something and you're having to go real slow and you're not able to keep up reasonably on the speed limit, especially if you're on the road it's like 30, 40 above, you want to use your hazards so that way people can see you. If you look down on this side right here, you can see your gear, your settings. You got high, medium, and low. So I would be using low for like pulling implements or doing your loader. You can probably still survive in medium for doing, you know, like your implements, but I would recommend low for the loader. Now, when you go all the way up to high, when you're pushing this up to high, it's because you're going to be in travel. So if you're driving down the road to a neighbor's house or wherever you're going, and you want to get up in some speed, put this guy in high, and then that's going to be the best setting for that. Otherwise, medium and low are going to be for implements and loader use. All right, one other thing is your four-wheel drive. So this is pulled up for four-wheel drive. You're going to push this down for two-wheel drive. I'd recommend it being at a complete stop before engaging either or. You have the switch to turn on your PTO in the back. So you want to be at a stop, and I believe you're going to use your clutch. It holds your clutch in and then you can turn it over to the PTO. As you can see, it'll show the little PTO spinning. So that's if you have an implement and you're getting ready to turn on the implement, you're going to push your clutch down, put that on, and then it'll turn on the PTO. It'll start spinning, maneuvering your implement, whatever you're using. Then you're going to idle up. If you look on the dash over here, which is kind of hard to see, you can see on the dash that yellow PTO. It says PTO-540. That is what you want to use for, let's see if we can get a better look for you. Sorry guys, the focus here is kind of not focusing too well, but you can see the yellow line in there. That's where you're going to want your idle to be when you're using an actual PTO and an implement. So you're going to want to make sure that you're not down at the 1 or the 1.5. You want to be at the number 2 or a little bit higher for implement use. That just gives enough speed and power for you to use your implements. And then finally right here is to lift your implement off the ground. You can put it down to drop it low. One is going to be dropping your PTO down, and 8 is going to be lifting it all the way up. So this is what you'll use to lift your PTO. If you're using like a brush hog, you're going to go down to like 1 or 2, you know, or whatever the setting is you prefer the height when you're dropping it down to do it. And then when you're done, you'll just lift that up. I would recommend first turning off the PTO and then lifting it up with that for travel. Right here, if you look on the top of this, this is your control for your loader. And this is a cool controller. I actually like this controller better than a multi-controller where you have one stick for up and down and one for the bucket. This one, you know, you push it forward, push it forward, it's going to actually drop the bucket down. Pull it back, it lifts the whole loader up. You push it to the right, it's going to tilt the bucket itself down. Push it to the left, it's going to tilt the bucket up. So you can go down and to the left at the same time when you're using, your loader. So it's really a nice control. I really dig this particular setup for the Kubota style loader levels. And then on here is you have a lock. So this is an important feature right here. You can see it says lock or unlock. It's in the unlock mode. So if you're going to be going under the front of that hood and you're going to lift your loader boom all the way up in the air, so you can get in there and start changing, like I told you about that radiator screen, and the only way to pull it out is to lift this guy all the way up in the air so it clears and lets you pull that out. Before you start working under there, come back over here and set this to lock. That'll lock this arm from being able to lower or heighten your loader arm. It's a safety feature. So if you're into there and you're doing your thing and your kid jumps on here or something and starts hitting this and then comes down and crushes you, it's going to be a bad day. But if you lock this in place, then that eliminates the risk of dropping that loader on top of you or someone else when you're working on your tractor. So yeah, it's a pretty easy setup here. You got a nice little cup holder. On the back here, you got your ROP. You can fold this ROP down. You know, in my garage, I actually clear, if you look over here, it doesn't look like it, but I clear this guy by like 2 inches. So I don't have to put my ROPs down when I'm pulling in. Some of you guys may have like a 7 foot or lower height in your garage. You're going to want to do that. It comes with this guy right here, which pulls out. Generally, when you get your machine delivered, they'll pull these out when they're in travel, so that way these don't fall off from the breeze. But you can see it's just a little tiny thing that'll slide right in here. And that's going to be for when you're traveling. It's kind of like what the Amish use when they're traveling in their carts. They have these on the back of their cars. And then you get a little cool toolbox, you know, to put your little tools in, and has a little diesel Kubota, whatever. I'm not sure what that little guide was. I'll have to look into it and see what this guide was for. But yeah, you can put your little wrenches and things that you're going to be using on your job that day. I've seen some videos where people are adding some other cool little like military ammo boxes and doing some little custom things like that, which I thought was pretty neat too. You have a little safety hook here to keep your PTO from dragging down. If you're not using that, you can just put that up once you're done. If you're going to use this, you need to lower that. Just put that hook to the side and then you can start using your PTO. So guys, we'll go ahead and jump into the final stage, which is the accessories that I recommend, and then that's it. Alright guys, so I wanted to show you guys the 3 accessories that I ended up picking up, just to make things a little more convenient for me when I'm working with the tractor. The first one I'm going to show you is going to be a gas pump. The gas pump that I got is just something to make it easier. It's this little guy right here. You can pick this thing up on Amazon for about 30 bucks. Let me show you what it looks like here so you guys can get a better idea. It's just a little pump like this. Basically it has a little stick on the end, and on the top right there it has a red switch for on and off. This is the funniest part of this whole thing, is this little gas pump handle. So yeah, it has a hose and then it just kind of connects to this thing right here. The reason I thought it would be convenient is because we all know when you're trying to dump gas into your fuel tank, sometimes trying to get up here to your gas can cap can be a little bit difficult without spilling it. You're trying to get up here, you're trying to hold it, it's all pouring out of the nozzle all over the hood, dripping, whatever. So I thought it would be easier is if you were to set the gas can right here on your step, just like so. Then I can easily just take this pump, stick it inside the top of the gas can like so, and now I can take my gas and stick this right inside the top of the gas thing, turn it on, and pump the fuel into this. This makes it a lot easier for getting the fuel up into the gas tank without getting residual spilt all over the place. So this is one of the items I thought would be really convenient for me for a real reasonable price. And I won't have to be lifting the gas can up too crazy. I can put it right here on the step As you can see, it's sitting right here, and then I can reach from there to the gas lid. So let's show you guys the next accessory. So this is the next accessory right here. This right here is a wheel spinner, and you put it on your steering wheel. This one's actually made by Kubota, which I thought was pretty cool. And what I'll do is I'll mount it right here onto the steering wheel. And then I can sit there and I can hold it and I can turn the wheel like such, making it easier to spin the wheel with one hand. If I'm turning around looking to the back of the tractor with one hand on the steering wheel, I can steer pretty easily with this guy. I'll go ahead and put this thing on the steering wheel and we'll give you guys a closer look. Okay, so like I said, steering wheel spinner, Kubota. I don't know why it wants to zoom. I guess it's focusing on my face. So yeah, that's it right there. Pretty neat. Sorry guys, my cameraman is out at the moment, so I'm stuck doing this myself, but we're gonna go ahead and install this. It's pretty simple here. They give you 2 long screws and then there's 2 regular screws. All you're gonna do is unscrew this and then clamp it onto your steering wheel. If you're left-handed, you're gonna wanna put this little spinner on your steering wheel at the 10 o'clock position. If you're right-handed, you're going to want to put this on your steering wheel at the 2 o'clock position. And that's the instructions for you. They give you 2 extra screws on here, I guess, in case you break one. There we go. And I would tighten a little bit on each side at a time. Don't over-tighten one side and then try to do the other side, because then it'll be cockeyed. You won't be able to get it in correctly. So right about there is about 2 o'clock, I would say. And this was probably some of the reviews I've seen on this thing when I was looking for it, is that people were complaining that they couldn't get this thing on and that the screws were stripping out of the holes because there wasn't enough clearance. And I guess, you know, you would think you would want to use this, but if you tighten this decently, it shouldn't be an issue for clamping on correctly and holding in place. There we go. One more tighten on this side, and I think we got it. There we go. See? Now when you're turning the steering wheel, you'll be able to go like this and such. I don't have the tractor on. You know what? Why don't I just fire her up and we'll try it. There we go. See? Real easily done. So that was the second accessory, which I thought was pretty cool. I think it looks decent on there. It's not too bulky, holds the steering wheel well. And like I said, you may be driving and you're having to lean back with your left arm like this, holding onto your rail as such. Then you can take your steering wheel and do this number, or go back and forth and such as steering. Or you may be just holding your drink and you're wanting to steer with one hand. Nevertheless, I think it makes it a lot easier to steer. And it looks pretty cool because it matches with the Kubota symbol on the front of it. Okay, Review It TV, so we're down to the final accessory. And this is what I thought would be useful as well, is some floor mats. And I know that some of these models, with the exception of the L2501, come with these models, but a lot of them don't. If you look down here closer, you can see that, you know, you have these little tiny like circle rivets that stick up. They're supposed to give you some sort of traction, but with this slick paint, it's kind of slick anyway. So I figured if I put some mats on here, it'll make it to where you have a good grip getting on, whether it's raining or not. And the other thing about it is if you notice people who don't have them, they start to wear the paint out, and then the paint starts to fade, rust, and we just want to kind of prevent all that. So these are the mats I got off of Masix. And you can see on these mats here, they have these water channels here. So like if it's raining, the water will travel through the channels and then come out off the edge of the step. And then it even has a nice Kubota emblem. So I really like these mats. The other cool thing about them is it has these like little rubber grommet things. And what that'll do is essentially go through some of these holes here. Then you'll pull them through on the bottom and that'll keep the mat from slipping off. So let's go ahead and try this. So I'm assuming this one will go on this side here. Like this, and if you look down here, you can see how these little rubber grommets are going to go through the holes as such, like that. You just got to kind of line them all up, And I know that there's some in the back, so maybe a little bit hard for you guys to see that, but I'll just slip those ones in and you guys can take my word for it. And then there's one more on this side. And they're a little bit tough for even me to see, so I gotta just kind of do what I can. And then I guess what you do is you reach under and you kind of pull them through and stretch them just like that. And these end ones are really tough to get to. I don't even know how I'm gonna get to. It's like that. It's kind of hard when you have sausage fingers. This one, I'm not even sure how I'm gonna get to that because there's a step bracket that's right there. I may just have to really work that one in there. And go to these back ones here. And this one, like I said, I don't see how I'm gonna get to that one right now. Should have thought about that earlier, but hey, this one's gonna be a tough one. Have to kind of wedge it in there because there's really no opening here. Honestly, the step really prevents you from getting in there. So what I will do is I will figure out a way to, there it is, wedge it in. You just got to kind of work it in. But there we go. So now you can see the realistic installation of this mat. But you can see they're really nice and they sit in place. Nice Kubota. And it's just a nice little look and upgrade to the actual machine itself. Just gives it a better look. So the other side is a little bit different. Come on to the other side here. So today my wife is being the camera woman because my normal cameraman is at work. So she's playing camera lady today. So thank you, wife, for doing that. So sorry, technical difficulties. My wife's learning the controls, but anyways, back to the mat. So this mat on the right side, I don't know if you'd call that the passenger driver, doesn't matter because that's probably going to be the spare side, has the foot pedal opening on it. And that is so you can put your actual foot pedal for going forward and back through the mat itself, as you can see. And then there's two holes on this mat. And the two holes are going to line up with the two bolts that are down here on the actual tractor itself. So yeah, what you have to do is take those off. I believe it is a 10 millimeter because everything seems to be a 10 nowadays. Let me just confirm that. It's hard to see with these black. Actually, it's going to be a 12, so a little bit different. So I believe that these two bolts that are on the foot pedal here have an internal threading on this bar that comes out of the actual floorboard. So once you take these off, there's not going to be a nut on the back. Let's check it out. Loosen that one a little bit. There's one bolt. And two bolts. So then your foot pedal comes off just like that. Just set that guy over there. Be sure not to lose the nuts. And then you can see there's one right here and one more over here. So take these out. And those have a little washer and nut, or a nut on them actually, so okay, so once you get those off, then the mat should fit right on. Thank you there, Mrs. Wife. Just kidding. All right, so same thing. Just gonna slap that over the top of that, like so. And that's gonna have the same type of grommets that you had on the first one. And I know it's easier, guys, to explain this than it is to show it to you in some instances. There's a couple on the back. A couple that are going to go through here. You reach under and pop those in, pull them down as you push, like so. And there's a couple back here. They're a little bit hard to get to, so I'm going to have to get further down. Wow, real tight spacing to get to this one. I don't even feel it, honestly. Let's see. I'm gonna look in here. And I'll just come down under it. There it is. Yeah, I would have never been able to show you guys this from the bottom. There's that one. And I got one more. Where's it at? There it is. Wow. Like, I don't even know if I can get to this last one. Ugh. I don't know if I can. There we go. Cool. All right. So yes, these mats can be a little bit difficult getting them on at first. Okay, so we have a little bit of difficulty getting this in. This mat's really tight with these two bolts here. That's why we cut the video for a second. Just don't forget, you gotta have these little grommets on the bottom that I showed you earlier in the video. So when you put those through the hole, you're gonna pull them down from the bottom and then push down on it until you get this mat to fit in place. Definitely a difficult thing to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten the two bolts up here, and then we'll get the foot pedal back on it, and that's it, guys. I wouldn't say it was simple, but I mean, better than nothing, I guess. Alright. Now, the foot pedal. So yeah, that's the only difficulty is this side. I think Masix needs to line their holes up a little bit better here for the input for the tracing of these holes and where they're placed on here versus where they're drilled onto the mats. So if you guys are watching Masix, that was the only little thing that I found to be a little bit off on your mats. But I guess that's what you get when you buy aftermarket stuff. I don't think that they sell mats for this tractor, this particular model, unless they're aftermarket, so I didn't really have a choice if I didn't want to scrape up and scratch up the floorboard here. There it is. So now we can take a quick look at this again one more time. All right, so there it is. Mats in on the passenger, I'll just call it the passenger side. And another mat in on the driver's side. Definitely look clean all around. So that was the third and final accessory. Of course, guys, there's plenty of other accessories you guys can get for this machine. Those are just a few of the starter ones I wanted, so appreciate you guys checking that out. Alright guys, we've come to the end of the video. I just want to thank all my current subscribers on Review It TV for tuning back in, watching this video, and sticking around through all the other videos that are available on this channel for you to see. If you're new to the channel and this is your first time watching this video or this channel period, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and giving the video a shot. There's other valuable videos on this channel you can check out that have to do with UTVs, product reviews, and so on that you might find interesting. So check those videos out if you haven't already seen them. We did cover a lot of valuable information today, guys, regarding the purchase of this type of tractor, the difference between manual and HST hydrostatic transmissions. We also talked about after delivery inspection regarding maybe lacking on the fluids or grease or other things that you should check regarding the torque specs on your tires and so on. So just remember, guys, it might be useful, such as you've seen in the video, to go out prior to getting your machine and picking up some extra tubes of grease and some fluids such as the front axle fluid, even hydro fluid for the transmission and hydraulics and stuff. That'll just help you in case you do go to do your inspection, you find that it's lacking in some areas and you need to top something off, then you already have it, thus saving you an extra trip, which I could have prevented and I didn't, so I learned something myself. I also want to tell you guys to keep your manuals. If you have your guys' instruction and owner manuals for the loader attachments or whatever attachments you might have, the backhoe attachment and the actual tractor itself, get familiar with these manuals. These guys have a lot of valuable information in them. They tell you about key points regarding services at what amount of hours and how to troubleshoot and things like that, so you're not having to just search around on the net. You can actually find the key information specific to your machine.
So we were also able to look at a few accessories. I hope that those were some valuable items that you may consider if you get your machine. I think it's going to be a little bit convenient for me on this machine when I get started digging in and doing all the work I plan on doing for this. So anyways, guys, I appreciate it once again. Thanks for tuning in to Review a TV, and until next time, we'll see you then.